You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Our conversation, first, of course, is on how to better secure schools in the country on the heels of recent abductions of students from their schools. We have three guests with us to discuss this. First, let's welcome Joshak Habila, who is a retired Deputy Inspector General of Police. DIG Habila, pleasure to have you with us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And also joining this conversation, two other regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria on security issues. From Lagos, we've been joined by Dr. Ona Ehomo, who is President Association of Industrial Security and Safety Operators of Nigeria. Dr. Ehomo, delighted to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, sir.
And Kabiru Adamu, a security expert, is joining the discussion via Zoom. Thank you, Kabiru, for joining us this morning for the first conversation on the program.
Thank you, Kiran. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, gentlemen, let's begin by having your take on the latest incidents of abduction of school students and their school premises. 2014, we had Chibok. 2018, sometime in February, that's almost 3 years now, we had Dapchi. And now, perhaps the largest in terms of numbers, even though there are still speculations that as to the exact census of those who have not been accounted for. We're having Kankara, some accounts say about 300 of them. What is your impression as to what's happening? DIG Joshua Kabila.
Thank you. It's not a surprise to have that kind of incident at that axis because Katsina, Zamfara, and Kaduna has had a lot of bandits activities in that thick forest that spread across these three states. And so that incident that happened wouldn't be a surprise. Rather, it's a wake-up call for Nigerians to ensure that something better is done to prevent or to nip in the bud when it is happening. I think that is exactly what we should be thinking of.
When you say it is not a surprise, so the presumption therefore will be it probably was expected or that it might happen, it could happen. And if that is the presumption that we can make in this respect, why then would it be that the security agents or agencies were caught flat-footed?
Yes, I am saying it is not a big surprise because activities of bandits in Kaduna, part of Kaduna, Zamfara, and Katsina have been quite a while. And there are a lot of attempts, particularly in Katsina, where the governor also have had issues of letting a lot of them coming up to surrender their arms and also pledge loyalty and also undertake the fact that they will not go back to such places, and they were instituted into the system. They were brought in and then planted into the system and accepted. And so you could see that it is true that there are a lot of bandits around there. But this one of the Kankara, abducting these students is quite a new kind of activities by these bandits, and we just have to ensure that there are solutions to it, and there are a lot of ways we can checkmate that kind of incident.
All right, thank you. Let's turn to Ona Ehomo, President of Association of Industrial Security and Safety Operations of Nigeria. Give us a sense of how you feel with this incident, given the fact that Kingsley just read out a number of times the incident has happened, and the latest, of course, which is the most striking, just took place sometime last week. So how do you react to this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kieran. I think I'll just follow up from what DIG Habila was saying, that it's not a surprise. Yes, what he means by that, let's put it in security parlance, is that that vulnerability was in the public domain. We knew the intentions of the bad guys. We knew that they had the capability. Intention, that means what are the threats against targets, like in this case schools. They had the capability, they could do it, they had the weapons, they had the machines to ride around. And what is their purpose? They want to collect ransom money. And so everything is out there already. Now, all that needed to happen was for some responsible party to give the direction or to take action that will prevent this kind of thing that happened. For example, why is it that we don't have, or why is it that we couldn't anticipate this event? Yes, it's not a surprise. So we weren't taken unawares. Why is it that we couldn't anticipate that the towns and villages are drying up of targets to be seized? And so they look for new targets to seize. Now they have picked on schools. And certainly, of course, you've now even added the Shekau message, where it's not confirmed yet. But if Shekau is in that mix, then that even throws in a whole, throws in a new dimension to this problem, meaning that BH is now operational not only in the northeast, but they're also operational in the northwest. And that's a very toxic mix right there.
Okay, Dr. Ekomo, thanks a lot for your opening salvo. Well, let's also get the opening comment of Dr. Kabiru Adamu.
Thank you, Kingsley. So just to put all of this in context, the records at my disposal shows that 1,400 schools have so far been destroyed. That's since 2014, and that out of this, about 1,300 casualties for teachers and students. So with these statistics, it's very clear, and I agree with my co-discussants, that this could have been anticipated, and that means, of course, steps should have been taken to prevent the Kankara incident. That's not to say government has not done anything in this regard. As far back as 2014, the Safe School Initiative was signed into by Nigeria immediately after the World Economic Forum. And the former Prime Minister of the UK, Gordon Brown, spearheaded that move. And he was able to get several countries to donate, at that time, about $10 million for the takeoff fund of that Safe School Initiative, which then was meant to target 500 schools. Now, move on to 2019, when the Safe School Declaration was also signed into by the Nigerian government. And Nigeria was one of the first of 37 countries to sign into that declaration with three objectives. Number one, protect schools. Number two, protect communities within those schools. And then number three, vulnerable persons within those schools. So for instance, girls that could be a target of gender-based violence would also be protected. But the challenge has been how to translate that declaration into meaningful objectives. In other words, the policy statement as well as the law that would back that declaration have not yet been passed by the National Assembly. So just like my co-discussant mentioned, the statistics tells us clearly that schools are vulnerable, and unfortunately, we did not take enough steps to protect those schools. Perhaps in the course of the discussion, we can talk about how these schools are impacted by violence. When, for instance, in Maiduguri, schools are being occupied either by the military or some of the non-state actors. And so that means students are unable to attend those schools. So this issue has different ramifications, and I'm hoping that we'll discuss some of it in the course of our conversation.
Yes, different ramifications, and that is very true. Let's return to the studio here. Josh Kabila, as a matter of fact, this has become a phenomenon in this country, based on the fact that now we're not just talking about Boko Haram, we're not talking about bandits who now have developed the capacity to invade the school and, of course, abduct as many as 300 students. Now, in the realm of security, what would be the best approach to this? Nigeria having been a signatory to the Safe School, the signatory to the Safe School program, which is the global program. What should be the best approach to protecting, students, especially those who are in boarding schools? And the school in question, actually, if you look at the location of that school, you will know that it is highly vulnerable because it's totally out of somewhere in the bush, if you ask me.
Yes, thank you. It has happened before when we had it in Chibok, and then Buniadi in Yobe, and then the Dabchin. I have had opportunity to be part of the think tank that Mr. President charged the security agencies that they should come up with a solution. And in that incident, what the security operative did, or what the security template that was played out was for the Dabchi. The lesson learned was that schools should be protected using the Nigerian police, the civil defense, and the SSS, that is the secret intelligence, who also could cultivate some intelligence and information before it happened. And we went and we were able to collapse. Some of the schools were collapsed. They were collapsed together. They were merged. And then security provided, particularly schools like those of them that were in Dapchi, and some of it that were in Meduguri during that Chibok incident. And also the community were brought into the picture of what happened, and they were also reminded of their responsibility to the country as a citizen, to also observe, and whatever that is strange around them, they should quickly alert the security. And that was done. And I think after that we had some respite, we had some stabilization, and of course some of the activities in the school went fine. But I think after that the security agency did not do much. But I think that there are a lot of ways we can come together. There are a lot of ways that we can prefer to ensure that schools are safe wherever they are. If we bring this template by, first of all, you have to include the communities, because those that would come, to precipitate this kind of situation are seen. A lot of people would have crossed them. A lot of people would have known when they were planning. Quite a number would have also seen them preparing, or even coming to cause this act, coming to effect what they plan. And so there are a lot of things we can do, including the communities and including people around. People must watch, must see and say something, because if that is not done, then always there will always be a surprise from these bandits. And so there are very simple ways that will not cost money. People need to be educated. People need to be told that they have a say in their safety, and that people that are noticed not to be members of the community must definitely be reported. And if you do that, then you are likely to have some respite, and then an addition to what the security will do. Otherwise, if we keep quiet this will continue to rear its head.
Okay, thank you very much, DIG Habila. But let's return to Dr. Ona Ehomo. Dr. Ona Ehomo, there is some curiosity about the latest incident of abduction in Kankara in Katsina State. None of us, was a witness, but we can attempt some reconstruction and therefore just attempt also to make sense of what transpired against the previous experiences that we'd had, namely Chibok and Dapchi. In Dapchi, nearly 3 years ago, the terrorists were reported to have come in their pickup trucks with which they used to convey the girls. In Chibok, they also used trucks. But here we are, over 300 pupils reportedly abducted and then conveyed on motorbikes. On motorbikes. Assuming you were to have 3 or 4 of those pupils on one motorbike, I mean, you would need several motorbikes to do this, and the shared noise from the motorbikes alone, as they were going for the operation and as they were also conveying the students, ought to have triggered some sensitive antenna to say, look, something is playing out. It just looks curious, almost like a movie that you are conveying 300 persons in the night, not in daytime. And they were not going for any road show. What's your reading of what probably happened?
Thank you very much, Honorable Kingsley. Well, it's quite sad that we have very poor security awareness, security knowledge in this part of the world. And, well, let's just go back for a second and look at the scenario you painted. In Chibok, they came with trucks. Some of the trucks broke down. Some of the girls escaped. In Dapchi, none of the girls escaped. All the girls were secured and taken and then returned later, except Leah Sharibu, who is still in captivity. And now in this one, this is a classic. This is an unprecedented terrorist attack. First of all, the world has never seen anything like this in terms of numbers of victims seized, in terms of numbers of abductees. So this is unprecedented. So Nigeria has just entered the infamous World Book of Guinness Record in the wrong direction. Now, secondly, the herding, the movement, the transportation, because it's a logistical issue here. How do you move 300 persons out from a school and on motorbikes? How many motorbikes do you need? How many attackers were there in the first place? So I think I can tell you, like you said, let's try to create a scenario of what happened. Well, what happened here was that it was a well-planned attack. Well, a lot of students are missing, probably in that number, in that magnitude, and they were herded. They went because one of the students who escaped and came back talked about the march into the forest. So they were herded. That is like the way you herd cattle. You just say, go this direction. And so they weren't all really carried in the bikes. Of course, that would be a logistical nightmare. It wouldn't, they wouldn't be able to do that because you remember they have to have enough of a number of attackers to take down the school and then carry each bike, that's have each bike, then carry maybe 2 passengers on. So if you do the math, you see that they needed at least a couple hundred bikes to do that logistical movement. So I think they use the herding technique. When you fire shots, when you create fear in people start behaving like cattle. You just say move this way and they will move, and that's what they did. Now some of the students who were courageous enough were able to dodge. That's how you got the 17 that they say came back, or whatever numbers. But at least there was a student who was interviewed, which I saw specific, because I love case studies for this reason. You can know the stories, you can know what exactly transpired, and you can now read into it whatever scenarios based on your knowledge and experience and what have you. So I think, sir, that we are getting to a level where we've seen that happen in a lot of those states around the Rugu Forest, Zamfara, Katsina, Niger, Kaduna. We've seen these mass abductions, and this is just taking mass abductions to a new level. And I think the fear factor is so much. This shows that there's an urgent need to strengthen soft targets in this country. The government is really not doing enough. The communication is not there. We need to go out there and start showing films and develop protocols that will teach our populations that they are soft targets, but they have strengths of their own. Some of the strengths which DIG Habila was just talking about, vigilance. You have to be vigilant. You have to see what is going on around you. You have to notice unusual stuff around you, not necessarily strangers, even because your own brothers can do harm to you. If they start behaving in unusual ways, then of course you had the issue of the remoteness of that school, which made it a prime target, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are some other things we can talk about them, but that's the thing about the way they move them in terms of logistics. It was a herding method they used. They just kind of herded them and they all marched into the forest. The same way they march people into the forest, even here in the south. When they kidnap people on the highway, they march them for 12 kilometers. So now, please, before I go, Kingsley, this comes to the release I put out a couple of days ago, my association put out, and we said, listen, Governor Masari should also use Makama strategy. Makama is the former commissioner of police in Ogun State when those 4 redeemed pastors were kidnapped. And what he did, he lined up a lot of security forces and they marched into the forest. And they marched in far enough to get them. Now, this is the 5th day of that captivity. So it's getting bad right now because you have to go in fresh pursuit when these things happen. We are too lead-footed and we really need to change our strategies to gain success in these kind of matters.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ehomu. Let's go to Kabiru Adamu. Kabiru, you've just listened to Ehomu and his analysis of what may have transpired in terms of the way and manner that these students were taken away from their school. He talked about a heading method, which of course is more likely to be, because telling us that they use motorbikes to convey over 300 people, that would not be a true story. So now, in your opinion, what do you think that happened? And away from that, considering the fact that these children are now in the bush and that we are hearing a Boko Haram dimension to that, I've also heard in some foreign media that Shekau had actually pleaded with some bandits to begin to liaise with them and work with them. In that situation, do you think that there's any kind of synergy between the bandits and Boko Haram?
Yes, Kirian. Let me start with your first question. And to add to what Dr. Ona mentioned, the incident started around 9 p.m. Based on the account by the students that were either rescued or escaped. And so the cover of darkness also helped these attackers. The second thing that also helped them, in addition to what Dr. Ona mentioned, is the fact that they appeared to the students like security personnel. Now, we're not sure if they were wearing uniforms or it was the language they used, but the account of the students that escaped indicated that they thought they were security personnel. They used flashlight to ask them to come back after they had jumped over the defense to escape into the bush. These attackers now use flashlights to bring them back. So all of these factors aided, this huge number that we're talking about. And I agree with Dr. Una that, unfortunately, again, we entered the infamous Guinness Book of Records in terms of number of, victims of kidnapping. My friends across the world have been asking me this question: How is it possible that 500 plus students would be carried away and nothing visible really to indicate how it happened and then why it happened? So to the world, really, this is a huge surprise, and to us security experts, this is of course a huge surprise. Now, the second part of your question, we've always tracked this association between terrorists in the northeast and these bandits in the northwest. Now, there is a lot of nomenclature that is being used to describe these bandits, starting from the word bandits down to the Global Terrorism Index that is using the word Fulani extremist, and then to criminologists who will call them criminals. Now, irrespective of what you use, the fact that they are attacking vulnerable populations means, unfortunately, that we should have, taken this threat more seriously than we're taking it. It's also very important to note the statement by the Minister of Defense when he recommended that these criminals, bandits, or whatever you want to call them, be categorized as terrorists. So clearly, there is that association between the terrorist groups in the Northeast and the Northwest. And then not too long ago, precisely around July or August, the Ministry of Defense released a statement sort of warning that records show that these bandits, this whatever we want to call them, have now weapons that they categorize as terrorist weapons, including rocket propelled grenades, AK-49s, AK-47s, and name them. In fact, in that statement, the Ministry of Defense indicated that they now have the capability to shoot down helicopters. So clearly, we're dealing with non-state actors that are metamorphosizing into a bigger threat. Now, add this to the common factor, and I want to emphasize this point. Dr. Ona has mentioned it, the ungoverned spaces that exist in the north. In this instance, we're talking of the Rugu forest. That forest is cuts across at least 8 local governments in Katsina. So it is unfathomable that knowing that you are dealing with that types of threats across 8 local governments, and yet you left this soft target with, unfortunately, forgive my use of the word, sitting ducks that came and have been taken away by these bad guys. So our threat assessment, our vulnerability assessment, and our risk profiling, unfortunately, has not done us very well in this regard. And like I said earlier on, we do have the Safe School Declaration. This is the time to now start to implement that Safe School Declaration and ensure that all schools are protected. We're not reinventing the wheel. It was done in Pakistan, and in fact, in the US, it was done. The US has this peculiar case of active shooter situations where gunmen, sometimes even students, come into the schools to kill. So what they did, they also introduced the same Safe School initiative to do 3 things basically, and just to conceptualize what AIG has mentioned. One of the conceptualization is to protect the school community. The second one is to protect the community where the school itself exists. And then the third one is to protect vulnerable groups, specific vulnerable groups within the school community. So this is we're not reinventing the wheel. It's just for us to start this process as early as possible. And in terms of procedures, there are a few things that can be done. I'm sure between myself and Dr. Ona and several other security practitioners, we can volunteer really our expertise to assist the Ministry of Education develop protocols for this assessment that I've mentioned, the vulnerability assessment, the risk assessment, and then of course the checklist that schools can use in ensuring protection for both teachers, non-academic staff, school administrators, and more importantly, the students and pupils.
All right, Dr. Kabir Adamu, thank you very much. I mean, it's almost like a century ago now when we went to school, and you didn't have this kind of concern or this kind of anxiety. If your school had a fence, it was a hedge. That's either of a low shrub or very low growth trees. And here we are. In the past, we also felt that the boarding house was the best place for you to be because it offered you the opportunity of mingling with other students and also being disciplined in terms of routines, and also sometimes you had some bullies anyway who were your seniors. But it's a new ball game now. DIG Habila, should we now take it as a new normal that our schools are vulnerable, more particularly in the northern parts of the country, and the implication that would have on school enrollment, and therefore an inability to make a dent on out of school children whose population keeps rising?
We must accept the fact that these criminals have grown. Most of them are more down and picked up. They also have others coming up. So there must be a robust and a comprehensive plan to deal with that situation. And like I said, I've been part of it, and I remember that Mr. President gave that order when we had the DAPCHI, and Mr. President visited himself and met me there. And also he was briefed, and what I'm saying here is that we need to accept the fact that these people could spring a surprise. And that's why I'm saying it's most unheard of that this kind of personality that would come for this kind of 300 students, you know, and pick them up, whatever means of transportation, whatever means they must have used to come. I'm sure that a lot of people saw some of these things, and they must have looked very, very strange in their face. But I agree with you also that there must have been some camouflaging that did not put them out there as criminals. They must have looked like someone else, particularly the security agencies. And that's why they were able to even access that place. And a lot of the students who also jumped out, and they were encouraged to come back. That means that there was something they did that did not put it out there that they were bandits. And you know that in Nigeria, most of the incidences like this by bandits are, you know, kidnapped for ransom. And we will not be wrong to say that these are people that want to raise funds, you know, for other criminal elements like the Boko Haram and others, to perpetuate their evil activities. And so what we need to do is we must grow from most communities where we have this incident, people who should be able to know when to observe and what to do. It is very, very clear that a lot of people would have seen them, but because these people have not been fully informed as to exactly what to do, they may have run or they may have kept quiet. And so we need to cultivate communities in areas where we know that is prone to attack, so that these people also will help, because it's just an attempt to call if there are communication means. And then we also need to make sure that we provide this security to these communities. You can imagine Kankara, schools in Bokuyum, and schools in Talata Mafara, and other schools around there. You know, there's a forest that span from Bindungwari coming into Niger and spread into that area, very thick bush. And I think the government itself had an opportunity to try to put the forest guard. There are people, I think, that are forest guard, but I don't know what exactly they are doing now. But I think we can resuscitate that and make sure that there are forest guards planted in some of the areas where bandits that intend to come and cause this havoc are likely to use those routes, so that we can alert security agencies, and I think that we can reverse it, because what happened in Dapchi, what happened in Chibok, and what happened in Buniyadi, there were actions, and I can say now that at least we have some respite. And so I think we need to wake up to plant some communities must collaborate with the security agencies, and then deliberately these things, physical security, should be put in some of the schools, so that in the event of this, there could be some reaction.
All right.
I'm just wondering, I mean, it's curious. Well, we don't, realistically, you can't police every inch or every foot of a school premises where you have pupils, where you have teachers.
No.
And we have hundreds of thousands of schools around the country.
Yeah, but one aspect of this conversation could be the issue of intelligence gathering mechanism of our security operatives. And I would like to bring in Dr. Ihomu here. What do you make of our level of intelligence gathering mechanism? Because from this conversation, we've heard that it could have been possible to detect, you know, these mass movement, right, you know, before they even got to the school, as the case may be. And we are wondering why, if there is no such intelligence gathering, there's no way one could have known or determined that such movement was in place. So is there any way to improve in intelligence gathering with respect to, issues of this nature, knowing full well that in that part of the country that we have had the issues of banditry, Boko Haram insurgency, and what have you?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kieran. Well, intelligence is key to solving the problem of, well, I think I prefer to call it Northwest terrorism than banditry, because when you call it banditry, you are giving it a label that kind of makes it acceptable. It's not acceptable. These guys are just as evil as Boko Haram, and perhaps even more evil, because they are affecting a larger area, that whole Rugu forest and the surrounding states that DIG Habila was just referring to, that thick forest from Bindingwari Trough and around. And so, and then of course all the way to Sokoto and Kebbi states too, they are getting attacked severely by the bandits. But having said that, the question is about intelligence. Well, you see, intelligence, you have three elements or three phases of intelligence. You have the gathering phase, you have the analysis phase, and you have the utilization, if you may, phase, decision-making phase. Now, the gathering phase, that is where we could use a lot of community assets. We must use community assets. There's no two ways about it. People, like DIG said, people are out there in the communities. When they see certain things that are out of order, they must be able to report to somebody. Almost every Nigerian now has a phone, and thank you, Mr. Honorable Kingsley, for saying that they should not shut down people's phones, because there are people in rural areas who don't have the NIMSI or NIN, and if you shut them down, then of course they will not be able to give you this intelligence we are looking for now. But people have phones, and we can give certain short codes to people to dial in. Now, a lot of these people, they understand the local language. You can reach them in their language, which is what we are saying about security awareness training, going out, train these communities, particularly these hard hit communities that are in this northwest area that have borne the brunt of these terrorist attacks. Train them in what to observe, how to report, communication. I am happy that Kabir is on the issue. He's a risk communication expert. In communication of the risk to the authorities, such that they will first get that information, because somebody must be out there. Since we don't have technical means of gathering intelligence, then let's use human means. Let's use the people that we have, but retool them, because you must sensitize them. You must give them a feel that gathering this information and providing it to the authorities is for their own good. So there must be that community buy-in. Now, when you have that, it goes to the next stage, where you have like a fusion center, where all this information will come in, and you have all the military guys like Mr. Joshak and his guys, where they do the analysis. Well, this is supposed to be headed up by the local intelligence agency, that is DSS. They should do this analysis, and then other intelligence arms within all the services, including even the Nigeria Police Force, which should revive, that is intelligence school in Enugu, but that's another story. Now, so you have to have that fusion going in there, and then to have response, that's to have the decisions made and transmitted to whichever executive, could be a police commissioner, an AIG, a DIG, or to a military commander, who will make the decision of what needs to happen in terms of a strike against the hostiles, that is the adversaries, the attackers, like Mr. Kabir called them. So you see, what I'm trying to say is you must look at all phases of intelligence, because often we think only about the gathering. But if you gather this intelligence and it's not, first of all, you have to solicit it. You have to go out into the community and say, look, we want this kind of information, and you must empower them and let them know that this is going to be useful to the government and for their own good. And then you must now analyze it, and then of course certainly capitalize on it. That is, use the intelligence. Because if you don't use it, nobody, they won't trust you to give you any more information in future.
Right, Dr. Ona Ekom would like to thank you very much for your analysis. We have, of course, two topics to discuss today, this being one of them, but particularly also because it is early days in the latest incident of abduction, we will, of course, have to return to this subject matter at some point. So, Dr. Ona Ekom, joining us from our Lagos Network Center, I would like to appreciate you for being part of our discussion this morning. We also would like to thank Dr. Kabir Adamu. Dr. Kabir Adamu, I know you're warming up. Of course, there will be many more opportunities, God willing, for us to return to this particular subject matter. You've always talked about the 25 or 7 odd security and intelligence agencies, what happened on this occasion. There will be that opportunity for a post-mortem analysis. Thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Adamu. You joined us via Zoom. And here at our studios, deep thanks to DIG, that's retired Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of operations, Joshua Habila. Thanks a lot for your insight. We hope you will oblige us when next we return to this subject matter.
Thank you,
now, there were a number of tweets that came in. We'd like to appreciate the tweets. A number of them, of course, were dealing with operational issues and recommendations. Of course, now that the forces out there are still trying to comb the forest and get the pupils back alive, we wouldn't seek to jeopardize that. But regardless, we thank you for being part of our program this morning. It's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with the population census.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths